Hi everyone, it's Allison here, also known as Lasan Faye, and today I'm here with a flip through of my third bullet journal. So my third bullet journal is the one that you're seeing right in front of you. It's an official bullet journal in the emerald color, and I decorated it with a mandala made by Boho Berry. And also you'll probably have noticed that I pulled out this piece of elastic from the side. That was to make it easier to slide my bullet journal in and out of a traveler's notebook, because I kept going back and forth about whether I wanted to keep it permanently in a traveler's notebook or to let it move about. And so I left the elastic there because, you know, I kept going back and forth and never really could commit one way or another. This bullet journal was a bit of an experiment for me in a lot of ways. One, it actually contains 9 months, whereas usually most of my bullet journals took about 6 to 7 months. So I crammed 2 extra months in here from my usual, just kind of to prove that I could in a way. And so I also kept up and filled out my index a lot more than what I traditionally do, in that I went through and in my index I broke it up into my collections were on this page, and I generally don't have a whole lot of collections. I even limited my collections a lot further than what I traditionally do in this bullet journal because I wasn't sure how much space I was going to need for my day-to-day setup. So I actually cut back on collections I usually include. And then with each other page of the index is a full quarter of my school year. So I started this one in April of last year, so 2017, and carried it all the way through the end of the year. And so my whole spring quarter is here, my summer quarter, and my fall quarter, which I didn't finish filling out the index here, but at the same time I'm not too worried about it, because I have moved on from this bullet journal at this point in time. Once again, I wound up using the Calendex system, and the one downside for this system as it is in here, it's all one color, which made it very difficult for me to distinguish between what types of events things were. Major conferences, I actually wrote the acronym, or in the case of a road trip, I actually wrote out road trip, and that gave me some idea for the larger chunks of time that I was occupied, but it didn't give me a whole lot that I was really working with. And obviously I've changed that if you've looked at my new bullet journal setup. Though I loved how this Calendex looks from a visual perspective if you don't look at how I filled things in. I think it was very clean on my end, and I love how I wound up doing the titles. I almost did this like same original layout again, but obviously I went a different way. And yeah, so I may revisit it again in the future, but right now that's not what I'm planning on doing. And then for the first time ever, I set up a list of goals that I had for the year, and I made most of them. There's 5 of them I didn't make, and I'm okay with that. A couple of these goals I made some progress on and decided that, you know, there just wasn't enough time in the year, all the major goals that I really wanted to accomplish, I did get through, and I'm really proud of the fact that I got through them. So these were my goals. This is how I broke them down across every quarter of the year. And obviously I really liked this style and setup, and it's why I've carried it over into my current bullet journal. The next page is my YouTube tracker, which I've now moved this to being a monthly tracker rather than an overall tracker. Part of the reason is that I'm now filming a lot more, and I've decided to track both of my channels rather than just this channel. For those of you who don't know, I actually have a second YouTube channel that focuses on gaming, but that is something I'll probably bring up later this summer when I talk about One Book July. But you know, in regards to this, it's just the fact that it was at the front made it easy to find, but sometimes having overall trackers like this, it's hard for me to keep up with them. And that was one of those things that I let slide. And you can see how I let a lot of these slide. April, most of this stuff you'll have seen before if you've watched my Plan With Me videos. This was my school setup last spring, and I was still experimenting with how I was going to focus on my research. And this is back when I had a huge section for personal goals that I didn't really keep up with. I did some hand lettering practice in here on occasion. I came up with an idea for my ideal day for that term and my YouTube posting schedule for both of my channels. And the color coding here is just to indicate when I posted it versus when I filmed it or edited it. And I didn't stay on top of it as much as I wanted to, though this is primarily the schedule I use. So at least in terms of my YouTube posting, my ideal day, I have not been able to keep up with that. So that's changed a fair amount. And then this really just continues like it usually does. Trying to remember, yeah, because here is where I first did a overall preview of my projects for a given year, and you can see I fell off around September, October. This idea was inspired by Honey Roses, and I've since changed up how I do this project tracker, and that's what I'm currently using in my current bullet journal. But obviously this, I liked it. I think I gave myself a little bit too much space, and I really didn't track when I was doing things in a given month. And that's why this fell through. Then we get to May. I was traveling for a conference that was called Modular Forms Are Everywhere. That's why I have this huge block of time where I'm just like, I'm not going to work on anything because I'm going to be busy. That was the easiest way for me to handle that. And then the Zen Art Challenge, I decided I wanted to try putting a quote on my weekly, though that really doesn't stick around past that one time. It's one of those things I've done off and on. Here I'm now occasionally skipping a day because I was like, Saturday I'm traveling, there's nothing else I can get done. This is while I was at my conference. I journaled a bit, and then with some of the blank space I went back and did a little bit of a mandala drawing. Overall really happy with how this turned out, but I actually think I drew this over the course of 5 months. So every now and again I'd get re-inspired to work on it, and I'd come back and do a little bit more. So for those of you who don't want to necessarily dedicate a page to a doodle, realize you can take the entire length of your bullet journal in order to fill it out. I was brainstorming a schedule I could do for cleaning my apartment and keeping it clean. I do my best. Sometimes I get behind on this, but I do all right. And then I actually had this summer cleaning checklist, which I didn't get entirely through, but I got a good chunk of the way through. And it made me feel good when I did. Then June happened, and June was my first attempt at the affirmation challenge, and I fell off the wayside, and then I went back and I finished it, starting from the beginning again, later on in the year. I want to say I did that in, I think September, because the orange is my September color. I had my research goals for things over the summer, and yeah, did not accomplish nearly as much as I wanted to. But this is actually my overall goals for my entire PhD thesis, so it's okay that I didn't finish this last summer. Though I do need to start wrapping that up. So this was Memorial Day, which is why I say no school right there. This I added as a collection page later. Divinity is a game I was playing with one of my friends. Divinity Original Sin was the full title, and we would occasionally have periods because one or the other of us was traveling, and I just wanted to know which days of each month that we weren't going to be playing. That was just to keep track of it. And then we continue on around. And this was, this must have been, nope, this was finals week. And so I've now switched to doing just a weekly layout. I attempted to see how doodling back behind everything using a cool gray and a warm gray. I just wanted to try something new. And I then tried to incorporate that into my monthly. Really wasn't happy with it. It made this part right here look very busy and difficult to read, which is why I really did not continue with that. And then we have July, and you'll note that it starts getting a little sparse here, just because here I'm at a conference and I thought I was going to write a lot more, and I wound up not, and that's okay. Then we get to August. August was the month of the solar eclipse here in the US, and I was going to go see it, and so I think I just took a bottle of Advil and set it down on the page, and that's what I traced around. So that's how I made my circles for this. I tried doing a gratitude page, and that was nah, okay. Not really happy with it. I really liked how my tangles came out this month. And then I tried a different weekly layout. I forget who originally modified the Alistair method to do weekly tasks, but that's what this is here. And then on the other side, I was oh, well, maybe I can time track or at least put in my appointments. That worked out well enough. And that's what I continue to use for the rest of my summer. This is when I was on my road trip, so I was just noting where we were on the given days. And then since I wasn't tracking anything, I just did extensive journaling across this week and the next week. And I alternated colors depending upon the day. And then we get to September. And I completely blanked on the Zen Art Challenge. I just from all the travel, and then I had to go back to school and catch up. It wasn't going to happen. So, yep, because here I am. I've written out what my affirmation is every day. So yes, September is where I picked up the affirmation challenge again. And I believe I carried it through. I also decided to add this monthly rhythm page, which you can tell I did not mark things off partway through November. Though I have made a modified version of this that I use in my current bullet journal that I'm a lot happier with. And then for fall quarter, I had my usual Alistair method inspired overall list, and then research tasks, which this is still the method I use on like the first 2 pages of my term spread. Then I loved this spread, but I ultimately didn't stick to it, and I really wasn't keeping with my routines. So I had to step back and reevaluate things, and I'm very, very happy with where I'm at right now with my schooling setup. You can check out my current video on my channel. It should come up fairly quickly. Then week 0, because fall term is weird and we start like a little bit earlier than usual, but it doesn't count towards our usual 10 weeks. Because since we're on a quarter system, each term is traditionally 10 weeks long plus finals week. And then they decided to start actually observing Veterans Day at my school, and in exchange for taking 1 day away, they gave us 3 extra days of class. So, still a little shaky on that. I mean, I'm proud of our veterans. My uncle's a veteran. But at the same time, like, I question how my school handled it. And then we get to October. I got back to filming again. And then I was just planning along, going about my days. So there's not a whole lot that goes on here. Here I forgot to write the date and decided, oh, well, let me just try doing this instead. And then really not a whole lot's changing. I try some weekly tracking instead of monthly tracking, which I do keep better use of, but it's still not perfect. Saturday, forgot to like write anything down, even though I put it there. And oh, that was a good week for the top end of my habits. Then October 26th happened. October 26th is my birthday, and I meant to come back and journal in here, and I never did. But, you know, that happens, and I'm not going to worry about it. The weekend happened, and then I get into November, where, again, I fell off of the Zen Art Challenge. I was really busy with school, and then at the end of November, my grandfather passed away, like shortly before Thanksgiving here in the States, and I was really upset about that. And so I'm like still recovering from that in a way. But I went through and did as best I could. Obviously, I got to this weekend, and I think this was the Gymnastics World's Championship, if I'm remembering correctly. So I probably just like took Saturday off to go watch that. And then I was trying to plan out what I was doing in my Hobonichis. Then I continue on for a little bit, packing list for my Thanksgiving trip, and we left for Thanksgiving a little bit early, or I did, and I met my mom in Las Vegas, so we could watch the So You Think You Can Dance tour. And then on the 18th is when my grandfather died. And that was a hard day. So my mom and I hopped in the car and we drove about 13 hours to go be with my grandmother that day. And then this is the week of Thanksgiving, and I had to sort through homework. I was doing stuff for other things for school because I had a major exam coming up for my degree that I was going to be completing early December. And I was also just, trying to handle everything that was going on and get through life, for lack of a better phrase. And to help process everything that still needed to happen before the end of the year, I did a huge brain dump. Anything that got color-coded, that was stuff I needed to take care of before the school term ended. And I didn't go back and cross everything off, even though some of those things did happen. And then I get to December, and again, this is just a packing list for me, and at this point I'm just stressed, and that generally means I stop using my bullet journal as well, which is a shame, because I do a lot better when I use my bullet journal. I'm sure a lot of people would tell you the same, and that is that when you stop doing something that's helping you be productive, it causes issues in other aspects of your life. And obviously I didn't fill things out in December. And I didn't even get back around to the Zen Art Challenge because I was coping with everything. So I next get into finals week, and Monday was my students had a final. Wednesday was not even in here, but that was when I had my major exam, which I passed, thankfully. But I next got on in Thursday and was just okay, what is everything that needs to happen before I go on winter break, which generally means a lot of filming. And Friday, didn't write anything. Next week, I go back to just doing a week overview. And sometimes, here, I'm actually out of town. But, when I do have situations where I'm really stressed and I really am not taking advantage of my bullet journal on a day-to-day basis, that's when I swap over to doing just the weekly overview. And that's it. So that was this week. This next week was a travel week, and honestly, I didn't come back into here because I was on the road and moving about and talking with a lot of people. Though a lot of things that I write in here that I'm I should do this, I did get done. So it's not too worrying. And so, yeah, life happens. And this is the reality of my life towards the end of this past year. So I hit the end of the year. I decided to check in and look at what's going on in the bullet journal, what's working for me, what's not working for me, what do I want to try. And then I also sat down and decided I was going to do an honest budget check-in. And that is, I broke down all my finances and went, okay, this is how much money I'm spending here or here or here. And because I needed to keep better track of that. So I'm actually going to skip couple pages going to the end here, which I went too far. And this last page here that I'm showing you, this is something new and that I tried for the first time here. And that is, I have a second future log for things that will take place after this bullet journal. It's not something I've tried before, but occasionally I have things like conferences during the middle of the year. I had a couple of medical things that kept coming up that I needed to keep in mind. They were follow-ups to stuff that had been happening while I was in this bullet journal, but I wouldn't be able to follow it up until later. I decided to have LASIK surgery this last month. I'm seeing very well now, and I'm extremely happy and excited that I did it. And I highly recommend LASIK to anyone who is even like thinking about it. So that's what this page became, and I then migrated everything here to the front of my next bullet journal to say, okay, this was the stuff that came from my previous bullet journal, but that way I didn't have to drag this back out every single time I needed information coming from here. And then I also decided to write down things that I wanted to do in the new bullet journal, incorporating a color code, which has been going very well, using certain pens and accent colors, applying different spreads that I haven't tried before. And then I also went with what is the list of things that I want to start my new bullet journal with. And that's what this became. And I found this very, very useful. So to sum up what I learned from here, that is that stress happens, life happens, and sometimes it causes you to not utilize things that do help you. I also realized that, yes, I could fit 9 months into a bullet journal if I absolutely needed to. I generally don't like confining myself that much. I like having the space to spread out. To give you an idea, I am currently almost a full quarter of the way through school. And yeah, these numbers do actually match up fairly well. But the size of my collections is so much larger that overall, my day-to-day tends to actually get fairly well confined. Everything else I've been able to spread out with, and it makes me a happier person to spread out with that stuff. So I probably would not try to fit 9 months in a bullet journal again. And the summer, I think, is really where I managed to really cut back on things, because summer took up a little over 30 pages. I'm not going to get away with that this summer. I've got a lot I need to do. And so, yeah, I at least I don't need to be able to have to pull this off again. And I like that about the bullet journal system, is we have that opportunity to experiment and play around with something new. Anyways, this has been a slightly longer flip through than I anticipated, maybe slightly more emotional on my end than what I was hoping for, but I wanted you all to see what goes on in my day-to-day life, and how I utilize the bullet journal well. So I want to thank you all so much for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to me, go ahead, click that subscribe button. I love having more subscribers, and I will see you all next time. And until then, take care and be well. Bye.